Doug Draper.
All right. Hey, this is Doug Draper, and with me is my dancing co-host, Pete Mento. And this is Global Trade This Week. It's brought to you by Cap Logistics. Visit caplogistics.com for logistics and transportation needs. As Pete and I love to talk about, it's forward thinking. We're all 2021. What are some cool things happening down the pike? And we'll mix in some economic feedback, transportation, international trade. So we kind of check a lot of boxes, and we're excited to be on our third episode. And we kick this thing off, Pete, as you know, we're doing these live, which is fun. And I'd also like to make mention over my, I guess it would be my left shoulder. Right, left shoulder is a good friend of mine. That's Troy. It's a piece of artwork that I gathered back in my college days. So he's going to join us for this episode. We'll see what his demeanor is. If he minds his P's and Q's, he may be back on, or this could be a one and done, Pete. Anyway, I will kind of start and ask you to comment on anything I just said, but more importantly, probably jump in on topic number one. What do you think, my man?
If you expect me not to comment on Troy, I'm glad you mentioned something, because for a moment I thought that some of the significant hallucinogenics that I may have taken or may or may not have taken as a young man may have been flashing back on me for a moment. But that's really there, so I'm not having that's really happening.
There, it is happening. Yep. Yeah. All
right. Cool. So that's an interesting art choice. I like it. Hey, listen, you know me, man. I love modern art. My place is full of it. And I think it's great. Maybe someday, not today, because I'm terrified of what the story will be. But maybe one of these days we can get into the story behind Troy. I'm sure it's a hell of a story. But because we are live, everyone.
I know.
Live. Global Trade This Week is live. And brought to you by Cap Logistics. I know we have limited time because we're live, everyone. It's driving everyone crazy back in Colorado every time I do that. I know we have to get to it. Big news out of Beijing this week, everyone. Hey, here's a shock. The Chinese are doing well economically post-pandemic. Oh wow, that's a real surprise to everyone. Shouldn't be a shock for two reasons. Number one, they told everyone to stay indoors. I don't know if you remember the floating. They had the drones going around screaming at people to get back in their houses. That was awesome. And number two, they got out of this thing relatively quickly. So they were able to lock down everyone, tell them to go back inside, or who knows what would have happened. We can never forget that they are a centrally controlled communist government. They have levers. They have switches. They have abilities that other economies simply don't have because, again, centrally controlled communist government. It isn't like this. And again, not to get into politics, but there's a whole lot of bad on that side of the ledger that comes along with that. So that sort of totalitarian regime was able to dispense with a lot of freedom and create a lot of quick upside economically. And there's a lot of global impacts that come from that. They are going to be consuming a lot more imports because they were able to create a steady increase in wages. A lot more consumption comes from that. But you're going to see some good news with imports into China. That can only mean good news with increases of transportation consumption going into that as well. But what's weird is I don't really think we're seeing a lot of transportation increases as far as, containers, space, and all those other things. Is there a real glut of space going into China these days that comes along with it? A lot of glut of excess capacity coming out of China. I'm not hearing about it, Doug. So although there seems to be good news coming out of China with their economy, I don't know, buddy. Is there a lot of good news as far as space coming out of China as well?
Well, I'll talk about the good news in China. And I guess my skepticism says, who's reporting it and whose expectations are they beating? And I think you nailed it, is I don't necessarily discount the fact that they've probably done well, but the government can flip this lever and turn this dial and make whatever story they want the world to hear valid, right? Like you said, it's a communist economy, and they can basically spin the information however they see fit for it to work, and not only spin the information, but literally affect change. Like I said, we're going to put more money into this infrastructure, we're going to do this, or whatever it might be. So I'm like, yeah, I get it. Is it artificial? Is it real? I think that's the ambiguity of a statement like that. Not your statement, but the simple press release that they kicked ass and take names in 2020. So I don't know. It's good information. I don't know how rock solid it is, and there's my skepticism on it. As far as the volume and stuff coming out of China with transportation, I'm going to hold that comment for one of my other topics whenever we jump into it. So
let me just add to all this. With regards to controlling economies, we shouldn't forget that the USA, good old USA, we're also pretty good at manipulating our economy as well. I mean, we're about to probably enter into a golden age of manipulating this economy with interest rates incredibly low and with the global economy sort of in the tank. There's never been a better time for economies, governments to be borrowing money. So don't expect that deficit spending isn't about to end here either, and monetary policy isn't going to rely heavily on that as well. But in any case, Doug, I am sitting on the edge of my seat awaiting your first topic. So in the words of Pat Benatar, kids back in the bus, I need you to look up Pat Benatar this week for your music. Why don't you hit me with your best shot?
All right, 80s reference to kick it off. I appreciate it. And I could probably sing the rest of that whole song, which I don't know is pathetic or
that's wonderful.
But yes. So my topic is going to be a pretty quick one, but it's related to international freight security and some of the TSA requirements coming out. And I think there's all kind of statistics, and I'm more holistic view is it looks like it's trending to let's not have the U.S. government and the TSA regulate. Let's develop some standard practices and push out that monitoring and the compliance either to third parties or the actual manufacturer themselves. So rather than screen and validate at point of loading, so to speak, on an airplane, let's do that upstream at the point of manufacture or warehouse, and let's enable others to check the boxes and fill out the forms in order to be compliant, if you will. I can see pros and cons on both sides of that, but in looking at some of the new information coming out, I think the government's like, hey, we got a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of compliance, and I'm going to defer to you, Pete, on some of this stuff. There's only so many people in the government regulating and mandating so many different facets of it. I really think the trend's going to be, hey, here's a third-party security firm, so to speak. If you audit this upstream supply chain, I think that that'll be sufficient to speed the flow of goods through the system. Because one thing that the Amazon effect has showed us is nobody wants to wait. And if you're telling me my package isn't going to get to me for 2 or 3 days because of some policy that's a one shop fits all, it's not going to work. And so I think that my point in this topic is there's going to be a lot more third party and self-auditing of TSA and air cargo security in 2021.
Yeah, this is a topic, as you know, Doug. Yeah, it's very near and dear to my heart. I speak for TAPA every other week with the trade school on Fridays, 11 o'clock Eastern, tapa.org. And the trade school that's brought to you by TAPA, Trade School Fridays, they're constantly asking me, back in the good old days when we used to go to trade shows. You remember those, Doug. One of my favorite things about security trade shows was the dog folks. The dog folks were always there. And they had, they were mostly German Shepherds, but there were other types of dogs as well. And they would do demonstrations of how incredibly accurate these dogs were, and finding not just bombs, but any sort of implement that we would want to uncover that could be used in explosives, that would be an implement and part of an explosive, they were amazingly more accurate than any kind of electronic screening, person looking over a computer, and they were significantly more inexpensive. They were quicker, they were more efficient, and over time they're being used more and more. So here's this biological process that is generally more successful than a human and electronic process that is much more expensive. You're going to see a lot more of that. And I love this idea you were talking about of third parties being engaged, because when I believe generally third parties are going to come up with a more cost-effective way to do it, the problem you've got is that governments tend to just want to throw money at a problem, and a lot of, government capture. Have you ever used Clear, Doug, when you go through Denver at the airports?
Nope. I'm very familiar with it, but was not a active engagement with it. What about you?
Yeah, I use it. I use it because I fly a lot, and they had it at both Dulles and at DCA. And it's an interesting idea that, you pay a little extra, and even though you may be TSA pre-check, and although you might have you might have that special United, whatever it is, to get you through that line, because a lot of people fly through United in Colorado is a great example. Everybody has premier status because it's the one airline that flies through there, that Frontier, right? By using this Clear, they do a background check on you, a pretty significant one. And they say, yeah, this is who this person is. Here's his retina scans. Here's his thumbprints. I guess there's another one they do. I can't remember which they are. And we're doing a biometric scan along with a picture. And we're taking an insurance policy out on that person as a private corporation, that we're confident that we know who this person is when they're going through. I like the idea of a public-private partnership that is being paid for by the individual who wants to use it, and they're working together with technology to come up with a smarter idea. I think you really hit on an intelligent vein that we need to invest a little more time and energy into, because people want to go through faster. So does cargo. I just don't think that consumers realize that yet. And we need to push that on the folks that are moving it. I think it's a brilliant topic. I wish we had more time to push into it. But you're really tapping on a vein right now with security professionals. They want to see more time and energy put into.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, TAPA, TAPA, or tapping on a vein. I like how you played that out there. So Fridays at 11 o'clock Eastern. Is that right, my friend?
Yeah, it is, but that was not intentional. Don't give me enough credit for that one. That was
all right. All right. Cool. All right. Well, we're 2 down. We got 2 to go. So we got 1 more each. Pete, what's your number 2 this week?
Okay, so many of you are going to be noticing around the globe here that petrol prices for our friends in Europe and gas prices for our friends here in the US appear to be creeping up. So I was doing a little research online. Here in the beautiful Granite State in New Hampshire, a gallon of gasoline with all the taxes included on average in our largest city of Manchester was about $1.98 a gallon 10 days ago. And this morning it averaged about $2.24. The perceived average of that same gallon a week from now is going to be $2.31 a gallon, which will be the highest price per gallon in roughly 8 months. And the reasons for that is they believe that people are hedging bets on the perceived availability of crude because of, again, a perceived notion that we're going to see tightened policies on natural gas exploration. And that will mostly be in the form of restrictions on fracking. For people who don't know, fracking is a technology that was developed by the Nazi Party, not just developed, but mostly, let's just say it was perfected by the Nazis during World War II as a means to flush out crude oil and bring it to the surface. It was really, a lot of science went after it in the late 90s in Canada and in North America, where vast fields of crude oil were found. And it has been perfected over the course of the past couple of years. And it was allowed the United States to become an energy independent country, and has also allowed us to become a massive exporter of natural gas and both crude and refined energy. And it's also allowed us to greatly reduce the cost of energy in this country. All that being said, and whether or not we can put a lot of gasoline in our Suburbans and our Jeeps and all the rest of that. It's also allowed us to have a trickle down effect on the cost of transportation. The number one cost of operating a vessel is maritime fuel, bunker C, right? The number one cost of operating an aircraft is aircraft fuel. The number one cost of operating a truck will always be the cost of your diesel fuel. And I'm wondering if we think that eliminating fracking or reducing fracking, if Mr. Biden goes through with it, is going to end up costing transportation providers more money for the consumption of transportation. I don't know, Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, Biden and the new administration, I don't think they're going to put a squash on it immediately. I think I've heard that he wants to ease away from it and supplement it with some other resources. So it's not going to go away, I guess my whole point. And the market, I think, is going to dictate when people are going to cry uncle. Right? At some point, it feels good to say that we're using renewables and we have solar panels on our roofs and nice wind farms out in the field. But until somebody's filling up their tank of gas and it really hits them in the pocketbook enough that they're going to give a shit, nothing's going to change. Are we going to be more reliant on foreign oil? Yep, I think we will be. Is that going to happen in a month? Probably not. But we got 4 years, and I think that it'll change. I think I made mention that you're sitting there at the gas pump, you're filling up your Suburban, and all of a sudden Manchester fuel, excuse me, isn't 224, it's now 324, and you look at it, you're like, God, that is expensive, and you ponder a little bit, and you wonder about all the cool stuff that the administration's doing. Pete, hold on a second, my man. So then you wonder about it, and then you say, hey, is that the new Taylor Swift song that came on? And it's out of your mind. And until somebody gives a shit about that, not a whole lot's going to change. And will that ultimate cost get passed on to the consumer? Absolutely. But is it going to change dramatically in the next 6 to 9 months, a couple of years? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe we're going to be able to buy Teslas from the success of these live shows, Doug.
Yes. Whenever we can figure out the best way to monetize everything, Pete, then I will take you up on that.
All right. Well, why don't you hit me with that fourth topic, my friend?
Yeah. Anyway, I apologize. It's one of those deals when you're live, you can't just stop what you're talking about. So I'm going to take this one in two different facets of it, right? And I'm going to start right at the West Coast ports, primarily LA and Long Beach. And I think I'm going to do another topic maybe next week or the week after that focuses on if chain in the United States. So that vessel has to dock, it has to have the container off, and then it's going to a warehouse. There's only so many warehouses in LA, right? There's only so much stuff. It's real estate. It's a finite box. You can't put 10 gallons of water in a 5-gallon pail, right? So there's going to be congestion there and delays. There's only so many trucks out there that can get it from A to B. You're not putting new railroad tracks down anytime soon for the intermodal piece of it. Then you have the connector at destination, which is the warehouse and the final mile deliveries, whether that's going to a DC or a direct to consumer. So all the flash in the pan right now is at the port, but this is not going away on, you got all these connector points within the United States are going to create delays. So this is not going away. My big point is that this craziness and the chaos and the news reports that you're going to see about, oh my God, there's so much volume, is not going away anytime soon. And when I mean soon, I'm talking like the entire year of 2021. At some point they're going to reset with peak season that usually kicks off in the late summer, right? And Chinese New Year, yeah, that's always a release valve to some degree, but I read just this morning in preparation that the number of canceled vessels usually is around 20%. And I think that American Shipper this morning said it was 2% cancellation. So they're not stopping, right? And it's going to continue to come. The consumer's still wanting to buy, and it's going to be a supply chain mess. And on the domestic side, what that means is that there's going to be more delays, more frustration, more challenges, and more news articles about how the infrastructure and the supply chain is challenged. It's going to happen for the next 6 to 9 months, possibly for the rest of the year. Anyway, that's my forward piece of it from the ports into the United States. I think next week we'll talk a little bit about, and this is the beauty of the show, Pete. I'm just kind of thinking of this off my feet, as I think it's important to talk about what happens from China to the port, because I think there's a lot of unintended consequences that you may not think about. But, it's going to be a mess. And, I liken back to the Terminator movie, right? There's this scene in there that says, it's the Terminator. You need to listen to me. It is not going to stop. It does not have, I wrote this thing down. It doesn't have reason. It doesn't feel pity. It is not going to stop until you die. Now, I think that may be a little aggressive, but this isn't going to go away in the next month. Pete, I'm saying the same thing over and over. What's your take on that? This is kind of a lot of your expertise.
That sounds like the American consumption economy. It has no reason. It will not stop. When you're talking about that supply chain, it reminds me of taking a water glass and filling it up full of water, and you keep filling it and keep filling it and keep filling it and keep filling it until it's overflowing, and then you stop, and there's just enough water on it so that it's overflowing, but it's not overflowing. There's that meniscus on top of it's just about ready to go over. And it feels like ocean carriers and air carriers and they're looking for that meniscus, man. They're looking for that bubble. They're waiting for it, man. Like they're trying to find out just how much can we pull, how much capacity can we take before they just can't take it anymore. And then we're going to drop another drop in. Mm-hmm. It seems that they've taken COVID and they've taken this pandemic as their opportunity for this great reset of determining how can we manage our capacity, how can we manage our own internal infrastructure to create prices that allow us to be profitable, to get rid of the old, to cut off the dead wood, and reestablish ourselves as a provider on our terms. And by driving this chaos, they're still making tons of money. And people are still going crazy, but they have an inexhaustible consumption. It's never going to go away. What are we going to do about it? It's like when my dad used to say, I'm never using UPS ever again. Yeah, you are. Totally are. You don't have a choice, man. You don't have a choice. You have two choices in small package providers. One is FedEx, the other is UPS. And for whatever reason, you won't use the USPS, but sooner or later, you're going back to one or the other, bro. So just figure it out, right? I think that it almost feels engineered, man. This chaos almost feels engineered. Oh yeah, that's right. It is engineered as far as the ocean carriers go. And as far as air carriers go, I think they don't have a choice. I think they're doing the best that they can, given the madness of the world and what's going on. And then the over-the-road carriers, man, they're Lucy in the chocolate belt, just trying to deal with what's going on as it's happening. And your point that you made, where there's only so much warehouse capacity, only so much you can do. I mean, you can only put so much water in that damn glass before it starts overflowing, man. Yeah,
I like the meniscus analogy. And the simple fact that they'll try to put one more drop in, right? Being in the warehouse, in the warehouse business myself, just push through a few more shipments, a few more truckloads of stuff. Come on, you can take care of that. At some
Damn
point,
it, Doug, there's no more room. Oh, come on.
I know.
Can't we put something in the bathroom? I mean, is that against the law? I mean, is the room?
Yeah,
can we put some of the dry stuff in the parking lot?
Yeah, it'll only be there for a couple days, Pete. That's I could go down a wormhole about that's the big. I could be completely inappropriate about some other versions of that, but that's the biggest misnomer there is. So the meniscus, people are going to continue to push the envelope, and it's just going to get crazy for the entire year, I believe.
And when you talked about warehouses, that's the one. Well, me talk about those warehouses. That's the one I think that 5 or 6 years ago, I talked a lot about these back when I was with Crane. Mr. Crane was building warehouses, and people thought, why would this billionaire build warehouses? Because billionaires know real estate. There's only so much dirt on the planet, and there's only so much available dirt near warehouses. You don't get that rich without realizing people are going to need space to put their stuff. And that investment, I think that company has paid off huge. And all these companies that built these modern, efficient warehouses near places that had capacity, near these ocean depots, near railheads, near airports, right? Near major, they're raking in cash now because people either had to put their stuff away because they had excess capacity in a down economy, or there's just a new paradigm for distribution and they need space. And I think warehouse space is still at a premium come up to a year after this pandemic. So yeah, I think warehouse is another tough place that people don't spend enough time understanding in this business. It's like export compliance. They pretend they know what they're talking about. They don't. But yeah, that's as you were about to point out before, I couldn't shut my fat mouth. That's going to be it for us on our live version of Global Trade this week. Doug, you're the greatest, man. Thank you again.
Thanks.
But live version of Global Trade this week brought to you by our good friends at Cap Logistics. We can't do it without them. We can't do it without you, our viewers. We'll be back again next week with another just incredible docket of topics and hopefully some more banter. And I really hope that piece of modern art is still on that wall because I am made of questions, Doug Draper. I am made of questions. Yeah. Thank you all for watching. You can catch more of Doug Draper on Uptime Logistics, and you can always get me every week on TradeGeek podcast. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Take care, guys.